in the world of sport, we have a problem. You know, when I was in the ashram living, I learnt a very important lesson. And that lesson was, think of yourself as a speck of dust on the ground. So you're not looking down on anyone, and you're learning from everybody.
That's right.
And the sum and substance of that was humility. Humility allows you to learn. But I work with athletes who have to walk onto a field thinking they're the best. You know, they have to have, some would use the word arrogance, some would use the word self-confidence.
Correct.
And humility and arrogance sit on the opposite ends of the scale. And sometimes moving between these two isn't the easiest thing. I've seen it myself.
Correct.
I've seen it where those who are arrogant, their learning sometimes ceases to exist.
Yes.
And those who are so humble in learning are always learning and never good enough to compete.
Correct.
You know, how does one manage these two?
I would prefer to use the word self-confidence and humility.
Okay.
And how do we find balance between self-confidence and humility, where in self-confidence you think you're the best and you still have the humility to learn, so your self-confidence doesn't go in the arena of arrogance.
Okay.
You know, so am I kind of on the same page? Great. Now, when I talk about self-confidence, I talk about trying to be the best version of yourself. You know, we are constantly updating our apps. We are constantly updating our operating systems, whether it's an iOS or an Android.
Yeah.
And the updation of the apps or the operating systems means to bring the best versions of what exist.
Yes.
And whenever you're updating to a higher version of yourself, you have to be able to give the best of yourself to it. Okay. If you stick to the older version, you reach the plateau and you don't have to work harder. But when you update yourself to a higher version, you have to give the best of yourself and 200% of your energy there.
Yeah.
Hard work, coming out of the comfort zone. Which is why many times I say, you are your own competition actually.
That's true.
Nobody is your competition.
That's true.
We have to compete with ourselves every single moment, every single day to get better than ourselves, to get the better versions of ourselves, to get the best version of ourselves. So when I talk about self-confidence, I talk about being the best version of yourself and having that full confidence that I can crack it. I can get there. Now, just because you're the best version of yourself doesn't mean that you're the best in the world, doesn't mean that you're the best in the universe. As soon as you start thinking that you're the best in the world, self-confidence turns into arrogance.
Yes.
The thin line between self-confidence and arrogance is self-confidence just makes you feel I'm the best of myself, and arrogance makes you think I'm the best in the world.
In the world, yes.
Right? So when we are talking about humility, we're talking about keeping our minds, our hearts, and our consciousness open to learn from the people around us. Everybody has so much to offer. Only arrogance stops you from growth. If there's one thing that's the greatest enemy of self-growth, arrogance. Thinking that I've cracked it all, thinking I know it all, there's no room for improvement, there's no scope for enhancing my skills, greatest enemy of growth. Which is why I think athletes, or anyone for that matter, has to have self-confidence, but they're constantly working on themselves to be the best version of themselves, but not lead into the arena of arrogance by cultivating requisite humility to keep that mind and heart open to learning from others. Therefore, they say minds are like parachutes.
Yeah.
They function only when they are open.
Is there a tangible skill or exercise that an athlete can use to constantly reiterate humility and practice humility? Are there small things like the example of how you gave me to be mindful in drinking your juice?
That's
Is there
right.
an example that you have in terms of practicing humility that can constantly ground them?
Correct. First thing I said is the basic ethic, which is openness.
Yeah.
The ethic behind that practice is openness. And the practice itself is, again, similar to what I said earlier, start with the small things.
Start with the small things.
I wouldn't mind respecting my lift man. If my lift man has something to teach me, be open to hear.
Yeah.
Be open to hear. It's hard to hear from people who are equal to you.
Yes.
It's easier in one sense to hear from people who are higher than you.
Yeah.
When people are higher than you, you take them as a person, the place of authority.
Correct.
They're better than you. In fact, whether you want to or not, you don't have a choice but to kind of humbly submit and listen. In one sense, it's not even little harder, but not so hard to listen to people who are lower than you. Because there you're seen as a someone, look at how great he is learning from a small person.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So you might even listen to those guys and take some clues from them. The hardest is to learn from those who are equal, because there's envy, there's egos, there is insecurities, there's pride. And therefore, I think let's start with the smaller things. Let's at least begin with those who are higher than us.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's at least begin with those who are lower than us.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, once it slowly sinks into us as an attitude, we'll probably start practicing it with our equals as well.
Yeah.
The Dalai Lama said once very beautifully, he said, when you're simply talking, you're only repeating what you know.
Yeah.
But when you're listening to others, you're actually learning something new. So if you want to grow, well, self-confidence is great. Arrogance isn't. Sanskrit, there are these two words. One is called Vijay, another is called Vinay. Vijay is victory, Vinay is humility. When both go hand in hand, Vijay and Vinay, that is a killer combination. Because you trust in yourself to do the best, but you don't trust in yourself to such an extent that you get close to learning from others for your growth.
Vijay and Vinay.
Vijay and Vinay.
Thank you.
Thank you.